When I was a boy, the spirit world terrified and tortured me, taking my rest and innocence in one fell swoop at the age of 5 in Wales. I survived but was forever changed. Now, years later, after nearly losing my sight, I have decided to leave the shadows. People around the world now know these things they previously could dismiss are real and have, with a complete lack of common sense, decided to brave the dangers of the spiritual realm, a stunt akin to dancing in traffic with a blindfold on. Reassembling an old team with my gifted childhood friend, we seek to train a new generation of folks to assist us in reaching around the globe to the fires that have been started by the careless, the foolish, and the utterly incompetent. Welcome with me, please, Joel Robinson, Reiki healer and gifted shaman, Sonia Lamont, Wiccan and gifted woman of talent. Today's episode: A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street is about the supernatural dream boogeyman, Freddy Krueger, the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs, born of a nun raped by lunatics in an insane asylum. The child would grow up to hunt and kill children in a neighborhood near where he lived, preying upon the helpless, until one day the parents rose up and descended on Kruger after he was released on a technicality. Chasing the killer, they cornered him in an old factory and killed him while he was dressed in his trademark killer clothing, wearing his fedora and brandishing his killer claws. They thought this was the end of him, not realizing all they had done was to fulfill the desire to be killed without true justice at the helm so he could reach out and murder all the children in their dreams. Now freed from his flesh, the lunatic kills in their sleep, taking away the one solace that some people have from their real-world issues, taking them in a place that should be peaceful and free. As horrible as this story sounds, it's not anywhere near as frightening as a true story that inspired the events. I watched every one of these films not knowing that they were inspired by real-life events where people in perfect health were killed in their sleep. Wes Craven explained that it was a real-life event that had inspired the movie, but he only ever cited one story of one boy that died in his sleep he read about in the Los Angeles Times, but that was false. The real stories that inspired him were based not on a Cambodian refugee, but on a particular nomadic people called the Hmong, who were chased from one country to another in order to survive near genocidal attempts to wipe them out. Chased for thousands of years, these people would flee from their homes in China in the 19th century to Vietnam and Laos. But for those in Laos, there would be no succor, and their struggles would continue first under French colonial rule and then under the Laotian royalty. When the Vietnam War spread to Laos and Cambodia, the American-supported Royal Lao government recruited the Hmong to fight communist Pathet Lao troops. Over a third of the Hmong in Laos were slaughtered in the conflict, and when the communist takeover of 1975 occurred, the survivors fled to Thailand. Those that remained in Laos were sent to re-education camps. They had a unique religion that involved worshiping animals and spirits and had a hard time acclimating to being outside of the comfort zone of farming and agriculture. But the worst was yet to come. Many would move to America, and the deaths would soon begin. Labeled as Asian death syndrome or sudden Asian death syndrome, the first recorded Hmong victim would be Li Hua in Orange County in 1977. According to reports, he had acclimated well to the U.S. and worked as a medic. A medic, folks. Okay, so he worked in a hospital. He was, according to social workers that knew him well, in robust physical condition. By 1981, the LA Times had reported 20 Hmong men living in America had died under the same strange circumstances. All were young men, showed no signs of ill health until death took them in their sleep. Their families even informed investigators that the men didn't drink or smoke. Some witnesses said they heard troubled breathings and groans right before the death. The deaths were now attributed in the Hmong circles as being caused by the Da Cho, which is actually spelled Dab Sog. I'll put that on the screen. A creature that made you pay for not doing proper obeisance and rituals to honor the ancestors and spirits of the animals. Though their deaths spread to Japanese and Chinese and Filipino folks, the largest death toll stayed with the Hmong. Can a thing we fear most get us in our dreams, or is this something else?
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what the research decided. So, a bunch of medical professionals got together and they decided that this was a thing that was genetically passed down. They called it sudden Asian death syndrome. So it's interesting because they were saying, and this is off of NCBI, which is like a peer site for nursing. they were like stating that within 24 hours of acute symptoms, dead, which is pretty impressive. These are people that had no history of any issues whatsoever, and it was the age group was like 33 was the medium age of
Yeah, the
the
average age
people
was
that did the
33.
cases. Yeah, they had 4 cases of women when this one
Oh, it was
research.
4.
There was the research I pulled up. There was like 4 cases of women, and there was like out of 12 cases of men. So they followed 12 people. I mean, that's not that many, but they were trying to figure out what was going on, and they take it back to like a particular. They figured it was genetics because it was happening passed along down familiar lines. So the how do you pronounce it?
You mean the monster?
The
The Dacho?
yeah, the Dacho. So the Dacho, if it's actually doing what, if this is what his job is to take vengeance on people that aren't living up to the rituals, the ancient ways, it makes sense because with the Hmong community, there's like so many clan names. I believe there's like 12. I'm a little bit foggy on my memory of this. So that means like you'll be easiest to target the men because the men should be passed it down to the wives, because the reason why they have clan names is so they wouldn't accidentally marry a relative, because that would be bad, having children by a relative. So it makes sense that it happened to mainly men, because this thing was hunting down the men because they weren't passing along the rituals to the rest of the family, to the women who could pass along to the children, so that could be passed along.
And what were the symptoms, the 24 hours beforehand symptoms? Because I'd never been able to find anything definitive, and I looked.
You know, they didn't really talk much about that. They really didn't say it. I haven't found like that portion of the research where they say this is what was going on. You know,
And that lends itself to the we don't know, so we're not going to put down this data because we don't want to have to retract it later type thing. Especially if they were not. They were. I believe they were even arguing that this was night terrors.
I found it. I actually found it. Goddamn, gotta love the military training for research. They would be, and this is like they said, die within minutes of onset of agonal respiration during sleep, and it appeared that they would have VFib, ventricular fibrillation. And so like when they were sleeping, that's what would happen, the agonal breathing, and then they would die of AFib or
right.
VFib.
That's what they were, and that follows along with. There was a gentleman who was present when one of the people died, succumbed to it, and he said he heard the person groaning, sounding like they were in fear, like they were having a night terror, the night horror, or whatever they call that. But the person never woke up. And in general, if it was a sleep paralysis event, the person's eyes would have opened, but they looked in on them and their eyes were closed. It's the closest analog in Western culture is the old hag, where people have the sleep paralysis, they can't move, and all of a sudden they start having that altered states, kind of hallucinating, where their brain starts to fill in crap because it can't move, and they continue a dream into a waking world. But if this thing was not real, why would all but one of the victims be, all but a few of the victims being male and at the age of 33? And was it 50 to 60% of the Hmong men reported having seen or felt the Dacho in their dreams, even if it didn't kill them? They could see that it was there. Why was it when they began to pay respect to their lost past? Why did she go away? because they actually got the people together and started doing stuff as they did in the old country, and then the dacho stopped its killing spree, and it was a long killing spree. It was a long time that this went on.
Like sudden nocturnal death syndrome. That's another thing they went under. Sons. It just. I mean, it looks like they still were studying it in 2014, and I don't know. Like, it's weird, and it's not like something like I work in an area where there's a high monk community. The people that I see, the people that this would have been happening to are older, and I would see some of them, but it's not. How do you ask a group of people about it being that once they find out about could kill them? I want to ask. There's so many questions I have for a bunch of people. Like, I would really like to interview some people about it, but I'm kind of afraid to let loose this boogeyman.
Yeah, especially since we know also that sometimes dreaming isn't always staying inside your meat, and sometimes you can go for a traipse that you don't even realize you're walking around, or you can get popped out your body and you're astrally projecting, and these things can happen to you. We've woken up with wounds, we've woken up distressed, we've woken up with aches and pains and things that had happened because we inadvertently went for a walk and left our meat behind it. And
I remember waking up with several bruises unexplained, just knowing that they corresponded in the area where in a dream I might have been fighting.
And see, some people would say,
I'll just bang against the frame of the bed or the headboard in some of these areas. There's no way that I could have incurred these bruises while I was asleep.
And some people would say, well, it's just because you didn't know you already had it, and you probably rolled over it, and it caused you to feel the pain, and your dream gave it a reason, which is just not true. Because these are some of these bruises were the size of a baseball. Okay, I had bruises on me in places that normally even though I would deal with my brother constantly being abusive, I didn't have to worry about getting hit. It was like ribs, side of the neck, that kind of thing. My brother was big on hitting me from hiding, shoulder, the meat of the arm, the back, etc. Anything to be able to Pearl Harbor an attack. So it's not like I didn't take account of all the places that ached and pained me before I went to sleep. You're going to say something, Sonia?
Yeah.
No, let Joel finish first.
Okay.
I was just going to segue into like the fact that this isn't like the only culture where things happen in people's dreams. Actually, vampires, YREs, were reported to be high-level sorcerers who would go into the dreams of their victim and drain their life, kill them in their sleep. It would be a slow thing. It wouldn't be so sudden, but it would be kind of like an ongoing feeding until the person would eventually die. So
with a brutal ending.
Yeah, and that's Eastern European culture, and just several. I mean, so this kind of creature, it's been known to happen, but some of them have different reasons for doing it.
Well, they use that sort of premise of thought of the telling people gives it strength, because in the other Freddy Krueger movies, that's how they stopped him from attacking, weren't it?
Well, that was the later ones. They changed the lore repeatedly, but that one actually it comes the closest to what the Hmong people were told. Stop telling people about the dacho, because it started killing Japanese, Chinese, and Filipino people. It reached outside of their group, and it was in the same age category. That was the first thing they said stop doing. And then they started doing the rituals to retie them to their heritage, which was extremely important. I mean, think of it as like Native Americans suddenly being stripped of their ability to go out and do their prayers the way they would with the, with the drum and the sage and the sweet grass and all that other stuff. Okay, I mean, you literally strip them of being able to do that stuff, and their connection to their heritage is broken. And this thing is like, no, you're not allowed to do that. Your entire existence is predicated on the protection that we give you. That's why you haven't gone out of existence. And so it, in a very brutal way, seemed to wake them up to, don't forget us. And good, bad, or indifferent, that's what it seems like to me.
And even to this day, inside the hospital, a lot of the people follow those traditions. I was actually talking to somebody. I was discussing my rune stones. I was reading my book, the Book of Runes, while I was at work, and it came up that, you know, like, somebody was like, yeah, the shamans do stuff like that, you know, a Hmong girl that I work with. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much the same. So now, even in this day and age, there are still shamans, and like there's a Hmong festival, there's the Hmong New Year, and it's actually such a big thing that parts of the city where the hospital I work at is pretty much shut down for the Hmong New Year. And it's a thing now, and they're following their traditions still to this day. And I mean, I'm not seeing anybody in their 30s coming in with any heart conditions like that every now and then. Maybe
or suddenly
just
keeling over.
Yeah, they come in with some kidney stuff, which could be related to poor heart conditioning. Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting that this is a culture that, you know, where most people, like third and fourth generation, aren't doing their traditions. This culture, there seems to be like they reach back and they are doing some of their traditions. When these family members come, the young ones, and they come in sick, and their family member bring in special soups and stews and stuff like that to help them recover. So
it just lends the reality that we are the spiritual has to be tended as much as possible, not just the physical, because if you ignore the other potential, then you're going to have things possibly blow up in your face. And I do believe they used to be a little more caring in a lot of the hospitals about when people would die. Nowadays, they don't seem to be as much. In fact, I think, and I'm not pro-Christian or anti-Christian or pro-theist. I know there's an afterlife. I know other things I know. And I'm not promoting one religion over another, but I do promote the idea that you should have a sacred place in these hospitals. And a lot of these chapels that they have are neglected, dusty, oftentimes shut down, and not tended by a holy person who wants to keep the aura of the building intact. And that is kind of important, especially in a hospital. The oral, and I don't mean oral like as in from your mouth, I mean AURAL, integrity has to be maintained, or things can spiritually go right off the rails and into the thicket. So that ends our second episode, based on A Nightmare on Elm Street and the poor Hmong people that the Dacho chased after and terrorized for, I believe it was about 16 or 17 years. Much longer than the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series lasted. If you like what we do here, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Let them know what we do here. We're not just talking about this stuff. We do go out and do help people. We'd love to be able to reach out and assist folks in need. So if you know somebody who's in trouble, get in contact with one of us, and we will gladly see if either us or somebody we can get to help you in the network that we're now building will be able to assist. Thank you much, and stay blessed.